Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's a delight to be with you again here at Unity of Rochester. And of course, I want to say hello to all of you that are here coming in online. And I hope the cold weather doesn't prevent you from going out and feeling the glorious sun on your face today, because it is just gorgeous, is it not? Is it not? Now, I just have to just say right off, it's a good thing the game is not at this time of day, because you would not be listening to me. You would not hear a thing I was saying. You'd be worrying about that game. But we're going to talk about the game afterwards when we eat together, and we'll kind of put up our cheer for the wonderful Lions team that we love and adore, and they're doing so great. So Matthew Long, my wonderful husband, partner, and just my friend, as we journey through life. And some of you know him. If you're a regular attendee, you know him because he has also been coming and sharing here at Unity of Rochester, as have I. And we're grateful to be here with you as a ministry going through a change with spiritual leadership. We know full well what that can mean for a ministry. And there's a certain you get kind of a commonality of sorts with Matthew and I don't know, maybe we come from a similar stream. But one of the things that's very different about he and I is he's a good joke teller. So if you've been around him, you know he's quite the jokester. And he has a joke for us here at the beginning of the new year. It's a New Year's resolution joke. And I just apologize up front. I am not a joke teller, but this one is so good that I just thought I'm sharing this. So this is from my hubby, Matthew. He says, what New Year's resolution did the spider make?
I don't know. What New Year's resolution?
I don't know, says Harvey. What New Year's resolution did the spider make? Spend less time on the web. Is that good? I did the same thing that you did. I just laughed. I thought, oh, that's really good. I got to share that. I got to share that with all the folks at Unity of Rochester. And then I was quiet for a moment, and I was thinking about it, and I said, well, Matthew, spiders live on the web. He said, Kathy, you can't think about this too much. It all falls apart. So I think that's a good way of kind of introducing what we're going to share today, because when we're in our intellect and we think too much about things, sometimes everything just falls apart, right? And we want to come together at the beginning of this year, and I want to encourage us to consider once again what healing is for us. That there is that which is healing us into the wholeness, healing us into a God awareness that brings together all the many facets and all the many experiences in our lives into a wholeness that we can say is one. There's only one that is good. This is words attributed to the great master teacher Jesus. That one is a oneness. It's a oneness that nothing can break apart. It's a wholeness from which we can live. So we're going to share about that today, and of course we're going to be really once again here in our Unity Ministries. If you've never experienced this before, we're going to share what we call the White Stone Ceremony. And I'll describe that a little bit more as we progress. But I want to, at the beginning of our day today, I want to just say that I, like you, find that when I'm on the web, I can go online and I can pull up information quickly. And it also can be a rabbit hole of an experience, right? Anybody here never been on the web? Okay, one person. Then you just aren't going to really understand what I'm talking about, except for when you think about your game and the Lions today. You know how you just want to know more information about all those players and who's healed, who's going to be back on the team. We just go, our minds go like that. And when we go on the web, there's no lag. You can just keep going and going. I go on the web for a variety of things with my work. And most recently, I have started to create a website for the work that I'm doing in the world. And good thing that I have a son who's a coder. You know what that means. He's a software engineer, And but don't go looking for my website right now, because it's going to look it's almost like I got the pictures in sideways and stuff. I mean, it's just wild and crazy. And that's sometimes, I think, what we feel when we look on the web for any news also. We can feel almost a despair, or we can go in a rabbit hole because there's an algorithm that will pull up. If I look up what's going on in the news today, and let's say I hear that there's a big storm, I'm going to get all kinds of reports about storms. If I go in and I look up some tragedy or something about the war, I'm going to get more and more reports about war. If I go in and I look for our past president, Jimmy Carter, I'm going to find a lot of news about President Jimmy Carter in these last days now, going towards what will be his burial, and as our country honors him. And what I'm saying to you is that any of us can feel lost and in despair about what we see in the news. But we have to also understand how our intellect works, and that's an important part of what we're going to share today. Because our intellect by itself can generate just more of the same old stuff. But it can also be very clear and intentional about what we do with it. We can be very clear and intentional about what we do with our intellect. And so I share with you the words of Jimmy Carter, President Jimmy Carter, as a way to encourage us at the beginning of the year to think about what we will do intentionally with our lives. He said, "I have one life and one chance to make it count for something. My faith demands that I do whatever I can, wherever I am, whenever I can, for as long as I can, with whatever I have to try to make a difference." Whew. Jimmy Carter, thank you. Thank you for that consciousness. And thank you for the many ways that you shared that consciousness with us. And for sure, as any president does, he had to deal with a lot of criticism and a lot of judgments about who he was and what he was doing and whether he was lacking in any way. But none of that stopped this consciousness that's found in the words that I just shared with you. He persisted with a faith, and he exercised his faith for the good of others, to really address fear, to address injustice. And I would just hold that up for us today as we create this time at the beginning of 2025. He also, I found out on the web, he also said this: "I believe that anyone can be successful in life, regardless of natural talent or the environment within which we live. This is not based on measuring success by human competitiveness for wealth, possessions, influence, fame, but adhering to God's standards of truth, justice, humility, service, compassion, forgiveness, and love." We all have this as our opportunity. Today, right here, right now, in this now moment, we all have the opportunity to ask ourselves how we will choose to be and what we will choose to be in the world as we go forward. And how grateful I am to share this exploration with others. I'm a firm believer in a principle of life that, again, is attributed to Jesus' teachings, where two or more are gathered. And there's more to that quote, but just hear that, where two or more are gathered. And I know that as I've really pondered this and contemplated it, I realized we are conceived inside the body of a mother. We start connected with another. And our life, the principle of our life, is to connect with others. It will be tempting at times to want to be away from other people. It will be tempting to isolate. It will be tempting to feel like I can't do any more. I can't do any more. But I have heard some of the most profound stories of people that aspire spiritually to serve and how they have maintained and sustained connections in whatever way, shape, and form that they can. So let's be about that. The white stone ceremony. Now, did everyone already receive one? Sean, if we could pass those out right now, I'd appreciate it. I want you just to hold these. These are made from like a quartz, perhaps. I'm not sure of the substance of this particular stone. It's been polished. And for those of you that are home today, I don't have a stone for you. But I know that you can participate in this ceremony today. And if you have something to write on, piece of paper, maybe you have a stone even. But find that which you will utilize this morning or after the service, okay? So we can all participate. So the white stone ceremony is a reference to the mention of a white stone in the book of Revelation. This is the last book that was packaged into what we call the Bible. The Bible's like a whole library, right? It's a whole library of books. We have the Hebrew Scripture in the Old Testament, and then we have in the New Testament what we attribute to the Christian teachings, followers of the Christ. And the book of Revelation is an interesting book if you've ever dabbled in it. It's a book that defies any kind of intellectual logic for the most part. And it was written at a time of great strife, a time of great challenge for those earlier disciples and followers of Jesus. And what we know of it is that it is coded information. It's really written during a time when many, many people were being crucified, people were in jail. In fact, the author that we believe, it's accurate that the author of the book of Revelation is John, the follower of Jesus, John, the disciple of Jesus. Okay? And he was in jail, most likely when he was writing these. He was writing to the churches. And in the second chapter, there is a series of letters to the churches, and that he has found an inner guidance, even during his time of bondage, to write and be an encourager. But he has to use language that is symbolic and coded, because people are being arrested, people are being crucified. So what can we do with a letter and books that are found that are so outside of maybe the symbols that we would even use today? Well, what the co-founders of Unity did years ago, primarily Charles Fillmore, I think that is so brilliant, is to ask ourselves to learn the way of metaphysical living, metaphysical interpretation. We can do that with this right now. I don't have to go anywhere to be a person that can interpret metaphysically. We are in a building, for example, that is considered a church building. And that has metaphysical significance. I can lift it up and I can imagine for myself the value and the meaning of what a church is. It might be a little bit different for each of us, but it's a spiritual community. It's a place dedicated and devoted to spiritual experience, worship, learning, study, and more. And I have that within me. It's almost like I have a part of my psyche that is very devoted to that. Do you? You're here. Chances are you would say yes. Perhaps you've been on a quest much of your life. Maybe your granny, like mine, brought you to church when you were little. And early on, that sense of church as a symbol has held a space for you. That's what we mean by metaphysical interpretation. Lift it up from the physical and understand that it has implications in how we hold it, how we value it. So John is writing letters to the churches in Asia Minor, which is really the peninsula of Turkey today. It's that area, that region of the world. And in those areas, there are many, as the Jews would call them, Gentiles, people that are not of the Gentile faith, but these are people that have heard of Jesus' teachings and they're studying. And they have exposure to many different spiritual understandings, the world's religions of that time. And John is writing to them and encouraging them more than just to be an aspirant, to aspire to these profound teachings of the man Jesus, but actually to overcome this huge horribleness that's occurring in the political rule of the time. Okay? The second or the third letter has the white stone in it. And it's interesting for us to contemplate what this could mean. But in that time, and of course, again, somebody that's in jail for John, he knows full well that when a person has been accused of anything and they're brought before a judge, the judge's way of rendering the verdict of whether the person is guilty or innocent was to draw from perhaps a bowl or a basket a stone, and the stone would send the signal. If it was a white stone, it indicated that the judge's verdict was innocence. A white stone is a symbol of innocence. If it was a black stone, it would have been the opposite of that, and the person would have been jailed. So when John is encouraged from within an intuitive understanding that he is to write these letters to the churches, he is encouraged by what he says is the resurrected Christ. So now let's see if we can put this all together. He's writing to the church of Pergamon. Pergamon, when we look at the meaning of the word, it means that it comes together in a very tight way. And it is interpreted within metaphysics, the New Thought metaphysics, as the intellect. So we can imagine that John, the lover of Jesus, whose name means love, is guided by the resurrected Christ. What does that say to us? That love persists. Even though Jesus has been crucified, by the year 70, when the temple is being burnt down, John's in prison, love persists. And that this love is guided by a resurrected understanding of the Christ. And this resurrected understanding is saying that when we overcome, when we are able to vanquish, really, the confusion of the time, vanquish the fear, that there will be a white stone for each of us upon which a new name is written. This is a heartfelt writing of a man in prison. It's a profound story, really. It's one that says to us, don't give up. That when we have love, and that when we have love for life and living, love for our family members, love for the God that we know has seen us through time and time again. And if you do not have an understanding of God, that's okay. Because really what John is doing is saying, have a resurrected understanding. Have a new understanding right now, even if you feel that you are imprisoned in your life, wherever you are, whatever is going on for you. For me, I feel like this is a teaching for our time. How many of us think, I just don't have a clue what we need to do as a country? I'm just perplexed. How many of us wonder, what can we do about our school systems and what's going on in them? We are perplexed. We'll put more money towards all of it. But we continue to be dumbfounded by some of the outcomes, do we not? So what will address war on our earth? It's like we don't have an answer and almost feel imprisoned by it. How many of you believe that the earth is doomed? That we are going to ruin the earth to the point that humans won't survive? Does that not feel like a prison? Do you see, we are dealing with some really difficult experiences, news, and more. But we have an intellectual understanding of this. And this again is what healing then can mean. Because healing is about, coming from the root word, to bring together, to mend. We want to heal into the promise that is God in our midst. And we must bring together the intellect with that which is more than the intellect. Because the intellect doesn't hold the whole picture. Let me give you a little story to describe this. Some of you have heard this before. This is a story of a bunch of blind people. And in their midst comes an elephant. A big, huge elephant. And they know that they better figure out fast what is going on because something very different is in their midst. And one of them, again, remember blind, reaches out and grabs towards the elephant and calls out to everybody, "For sure, this is a rope." The tail has been grabbed. Another person reaches out and grabs towards this unknown something in their midst and grabs the foot of the elephant. It's big, it's huge, taller than the person. It's sturdy, it's immovable. And this person calls out to the rest and says, "We are dealing with a tree here. This is not a branch. This is not a rope. This is a tree." Now, this is very perplexing for everybody because they've trusted each other, they've been together, they've served together, they've gone through life together, they've journeyed together. Another person reaches out and grabs something that's moving. It's more like it's grabbed him. It's moving all around, and this person screams out in fear and says, "Friends, we must flee because this for sure is a snake." This person has grabbed the trunk. In all cases, the intellect and what they're working from, their experiences so far, their perceptions and their judgments are false. They have not grabbed onto a rope, they have not grabbed onto a tree, and they have not grabbed onto a snake. And yet this is how we often go about grabbing onto life, grabbing onto our own life, isn't it? I'm sure this is what's going on. Have you ever been in an argument with somebody? You know, Matthew and I have been together 47 years. I can tell you we've had a few arguments. And I can tell you that we often get rooted in being right. I'm sure this is what you said. You ever do that with your children? You ever have a power struggle with them? Come on, this is supposed to be funny. We all do it. So, you know, what I'm saying is that this is the approach of the intellect. It is not the whole approach. It's not the whole picture. So healing is when we marry the intellect to spiritual understanding. Remember that this is John, love, appealing to the church. And it's the church in you and me. It's that place where we sustain spiritual understandings. Love begins to appeal to that which is greater than itself, a power greater than itself. Especially when we get kind of to our bottom, when we get to our end, so to speak, when we finally surrender our intellectual pursuit of trying to figure it out. And when that occurs and we turn to the inner church, that place in which we go and turn and know God in a new way, it's like partnering with the intellect. Have you ever had this happen? Have you ever gone in finally and turned to the God of your understanding, meaning the God that you've got figured out today, because that's an intellectual understanding, isn't it? And that you finally are turning to the power greater than self through prayer. Maybe it's get out on your knees. Maybe it's beaten on the walls. Whatever it is, it's usually those kind of experiences for me. But when I finally get to that and something else comes through, I walk away from it and it's like, wow, I never thought of it this way before. There's a partnering with the intellect and then that which we call the church or the Christ awareness within us. So friends, today with this stone, what I would like for us to do is we're going to enter into a quiet experience. And in the quiet experience, we want to, with prayer, and we want to, with really a willingness, a type of openness, receptivity, we want to turn to that which is our promise. How many of us have heard these words from Isaiah? So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. As we turn to that which we call God in this quiet, it is about 4 minutes, I ask you to listen within and to come to the place within yourself that maybe you've never claimed before, the white stone consciousness, a consciousness of innocence. That which is God knows us as God has created all creation. As it says in the book of Genesis, in the image and after the likeness of God has God created them. It's we with our intellects that have judged and criticized ourselves. It's we that have chosen to believe someone's narrow view of us. It's we that have measured our value according to how much we've produced in life compared to somebody else. This is not our innocence. And innocence would be to be with the inner judgment and to know I am as God has created me. I am innocent. I am the holy, sinless, perfect child of God, as it says in A Course in Miracles. I invite us to go to that consciousness. It's like aiming through the lines that have held us back like a prison. It's being able to go through them with a willingness and a faith. There is more to me than I have ever imagined. Become the president of your own imagination. Are you ready for this? All right. I know that a dear friend of mine, Ellie Harold, Unity Minister, she's an artisan. She said, Kathy, one of the most difficult things that I have noticed people, their greatest difficulty is to go into the unknown. When she has a new student come to her and they are generating art, they will often say, tell me exactly how to do it. Show me how to do it. Give me an example. But she's there to draw out the inner artist. So what I'm saying to you with this is, this may seem very, out of ordinary for you to really go into the intuition. To go in and say, well, white stone, okay, yeah. I'm willing to understand that that's my innocence. What could that mean? To explore, right? And then to listen. Because in that consciousness is the new name. And the new name that John was referring to in his letter to the church, in his letter to the churches. The word name translates from Jesus' language of Aramaic, nature. There will be a new nature, a new way of living out our humanness. What is that new nature that you already long for? Today we're going to talk about that downstairs if you stay for the visioning. What is that new nature that you really want to bring into that significant relationship that you have with another person? Maybe it's to know yourself as patient, or to know a serenity, or to notice that you can be in your work, whatever it is in the world, and everything can be going 1,000 different directions, but you are able to know the nature of someone that is present. Do you hear some examples in this? How about going into the hospital? I'll be in the hospital this week with our son. I ask for your prayer support. He's having surgery. I want you to know that I am asking for a new nature to show up as a mom, as a human, as a person that sees the highest and the greatest power at work in my son's body and those of the doctors. I want to know beyond the shadow of any doubt. I want to know the nature of faith that can encounter any kind of news and know that my son's source is at work as him. Is that an example? Okay, are you ready? Any questions? Sean, I think we're ready. So we're going to have this beautiful song, so you can close your eyes if you want to. It's very meditative. Breathe. It's a song that really encourages us to breathe deeply into the transformative power that is God in our lives. Go ahead, Sean. And then as we become quieter and quieter, more willing, perhaps a word has already come to you that you will write on this stone. Perhaps as you attune to the inner church that never leaves.
I breathe in
Go find
and know.
Fresh.
I breathe out and let go. Here in my heart, that's the right place to start. I breathe, just breathe. I breathe in to be. I breathe out and see what is true, right and real. I'm alive, I am healed. I breathe, just breathe. Here in this moment, if I'm in the flow, here in this moment, I let go. Each blade of grass has an angel leaning over, whispering, grow, 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 grow. I breathe in and know. I breathe out and let go.
hold these humble stones, really. We hold ourself. We hold ourself in a conscious awareness that that which we call God is at work. We call upon prayerfully the awareness of this mighty work, this transformative work, to renew our minds and our hearts, our attitudes, to be the transforming power through us in our world. And with this very quiet moment now, we call forth a personal, very quiet prayer within of willingness to be transformed at depth by the love, the great love that is God and is of this great universe. Together we give thanks, knowing that this mighty work is unfailing. And we say yes to this unfailing work through us in our world. Thank you, God, and so it is. Amen. Amen. Well, friends, I want to just finish with sharing a little thought then about how we go forward. It occurred to me this morning that there was another person that wrote letters from jail, Mahatma Gandhi in India. Some of you know his story. He was a great teacher of nonviolence also. And you know, this teacher, I'm a little more familiar with his life. We have more about it, obviously, more recent on the planet Earth. And one of the things that's true about Gandhi is that he was in jail a lot, as was his wife, Katsurbi. And Gandhi wrote letters. He wrote letters to world leaders. He wrote letters to the leaders in India. He was himself a transformation. He wrote that it was for him to reduce himself to zero. Isn't that an interesting thought? To reduce himself to zero. Be like St. Francis saying, Lord, make me an instrument. I just want to be the instrument through which, you know, that power flows, right? So Gandhi would often write these letters, and the return address was home. He called his jail home. That just confounds us. But the new nature that can happen through you and I is often the opposite of what the intellect has been trained to do. I know of a professor that would go in, and back in the days of chalkboards where you have to have erasers, Eknath Easwaran talked about he'd go in and he'd be there to give his lecture for the day, and he shared the room with another professor, and it was a great big huge chalkboard, I guess, and the eraser would be at the other end, and he'd go all the way to the other end, and he'd write on his part of the chalkboard that was designated for his lectures. And the next week would be the same thing. The eraser would be all the way at the other end, the other person's portion of the chalkboard. He'd go get it again. And he was starting to kind of get a little, upset about all of that. And then one day in his practice of being present and mindfulness and tuning within, it flipped in his mind. And he realized, this person's probably feeling like I am. Maybe he's coming into work, and he also has had to go through LA traffic or whatever, California traffic. Maybe he also has had a challenge at home with the children. I will go put the eraser at his part of the chalkboard. Do you see what that new nature can do in us? It really works in us to see our circumstance with totally different eyes. So I encourage us as we go forward, that which is God is working in us, not like that old God of understanding, separate, doing something to us, but working through us. Those of you that are longtime Unity students, we used to call ourselves truth students. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Yeah, there you go. So what we studied with our wonderful Eric Butterworth years ago, Matthew and I went to see him at Avery Fishery Hall, and he wasn't Avery Fisher Hall, and he wasn't there that day. But anyway, we almost got to see him there in his amazing experience with those folks. He would say, God is not in us like a raisin is in a bun, but rather God is in us like the ocean is in a wave. So this is a principle at work. Whether we believe in it or not, whether we take time with prayer and meditation, our RPMs, reflection, prayer, and meditation as we go forward in this new year, let's do it daily. Whether we do it or not, God is at work in us unfailing. Thank you for being with me today, for sharing in this experience. I hope you'll find out more about, we're going to have an announcement, I think, in a little bit, and I'll share with all of you what I'm going to be doing downstairs at 1 o'clock. Hope you'll stay for that. Ways to put this new nature into your life, the promise at work in your life. All right. Now, we're going to share the Lord's Prayer. Will you join in the Lord's Prayer with me as we seal this experience?